Okay, after typing in your part one on your gradebook spreadsheet, which is just regular data here, notice I've not included the actual formulas where I'm going to be creating those formulas. I've left blank. Moving on to part two here, this is the formatting of all of your data here. One of the first things it's going to ask you to do is highlight column A and change the width of that column. Now you'll notice when I type this in, assignment name is cut off because that column needs to be wider, obviously. So there's a couple of different ways to change column widths. One of the ways is if you know a specific width, to click on the column and then click on this arrow and go to Resize Column. I'm going to resize this column to 150 pixels wide, and you'll see how that widens it out just wide enough. Then it wants you to highlight columns B through E. So I'm going to do all four of these columns all with the same width, and I'm going to make those 75. So I'm going to click on the arrow, click on Resize Columns, and type that in as 75, and you'll see it shrinks those down. And then the next thing I'm going to do is highlight F and G and make those columns 110. Now you can also, if you want to, manually make these columns wider, but if you're trying to create a nice universal look like we are on this gradebook, it's easier to highlight all of the columns and specify an actual column width. The next thing we want to do is we want to format some of our font to look a little bit different so that it stands out as far as column headers. And this is where I want to point out a mistake that I actually purposely did. Student name is actually supposed to be on row 4 here. So I purposely put it up here because this is a common mistake a lot of students will do. And they'll type in all the data and they'll forget to actually skip this row. And the easiest fix to do that is to click on number 3 here, right click, and I'm going to do insert one above, and you'll see it inserts a row above that row that I had selected and pushes everything below it down. Now that I've fixed that pretty common mistake, I'm going to click on row 1, and I want to make everything in row 1 bold. So I'm going to click on the B. I'm going to make it aligned centered, and then I'm going to give it a vertical alignment of the middle, which is this one here, and that makes the text centered top to bottom within that particular cell. It's a little hard to tell here because this cell is pretty narrow, but if I were to drag it out, you can see now it's centered top to bottom. And we're going to leave that back to its original size here. The next thing it wants you to do is to highlight rows 1 and 2 and add a thick box border. And what that is going up to your border tools here, and that looks like this. And I'm going to highlight below it. I'm going to choose a bottom border, and I want to change it so that my width is this second one down. It's a little bit thicker than the normal width. And I'm going to do the same thing here to row number 2, and that is right here. And once I've chosen this thicker look, it automatically kind of permanently looks that look thick. And I'm going to add it again also below Jen here. So I'm going to click on borders and add one right below Jen. Then it wants me to highlight certain cells here. So it's going to have me do A2, A12, 13, and 14, as well as A4. So I did that by holding down the Control key, and that allows me to select individual cells so that I can bold all of them at once. You can, of course, do those individually one at a time, but sometimes that's a little faster way to do it. Then it wants you to highlight column G, which is this percentage, and it wants you to ahead of time format it as percent. So I'm going to click on this little button, and it doesn't look like anything's happened, but as I type in decimals here, those will turn into actual decimal places. Then our final step here is to alphabetically sort our students, and you do that by selecting rows 5 through 10, which is the student names. You're going to go to Data, and you're going to sort the range. You want to make sure you don't accidentally do just randomly sort the sheet. Otherwise, that will sort everything on your entire sheet. I'm going to sort this specific range, and I'm going to say I want it to sort by column A, which is their names, A through Z, which is alphabetical, and click Sort. And you'll see that their names have now been put in alphabetical along with all of their data. It's important that you don't just highlight their names because then you'll sort their names, but the data won't go along with that. So this is part 2, which is formatting. Part 3 is next, where we will enter in our formulas.